This is the second part of my video where I'm showing you how I have made a little miniature painting to go onto the wall of my Tudor doll's house. So my painting is going into this frame. This is the frame that I bought from a doll's house convention in York, and the little miniature painting is going to go onto this wall here in the bedroom of my doll's house. So, for the piece of artwork to go into the frame, I started by photographing Spooky, my ghost who lives in my doll's house, and I photographed her in lots of different positions in the doll's house. So in the last video, if you've watched it, you'll have seen that I also did a bit of a camera review as part of that, whilst I took my pictures. I have decided to settle on this picture as the one that's going to go into the frame. So in this video I'll be showing you how I printed it onto canvas paper and how that turned out and what I did after that because I wasn't 100% happy with it. So this is also a little bit of a printer review video as well. So I'll go into a bit more detail now about the settings that I used and the barriers that I faced and how it turned out. Yep, this is me dusting my printer with my hand. Does anybody else have this problem where the static just constantly draws dust towards the printer? I feel like I dust it every day. So I use the Easy Photo Print Editor, which is a Canon app, and I popped the settings in here. So I changed the width of the photocropping size to 66 because my little frame was 6 centimeters wide. So that would be 60mm, but I thought I'd add 3mm either side just so that I've got a little edge where I can stick it behind the frame. And the height I did as 86 because it is 8 centimeters high. So these are the pictures that I chose to print. So my little ghost. Now the picture that I took was landscape and the frame is going to be portrait. So I cropped it so that it would become a portrait image. And due to the fact that I was printing on an A4 piece of paper and I wanted to make sure that I didn't waste any of the space, I also printed some little pictures of my mum's creations to go into her doll's house. So this image I rotated so that it was filling the cropped size that I'd made, and I did the same with the other two. They're cute, aren't they? My mum made these characters herself following some patterns from a Cynthia Treen Wind in the Willows book. So the printer that I have is a Canon Pixma ip8750, and I bought the printer initially because I wanted to print my own art prints because I do digital illustrations. So I have settled on Marrot as being the make of paper that I've found to be a really lovely quality and that is a good price. And this is a sample pack of different types of paper that I ordered because I fancied having a look at seeing the different textures, the different paper grains and the different effects that you get by printing on these different papers. So in this sample pack it has got some glossy photo papers, some matte photo papers. It's also got some textured fine art papers which I'm so excited to try. I've not tried them yet, but they feel like watercolour paper. They're absolutely gorgeous. And the paper that I'm going to be trying for my portrait is going to be the canvasy papers. So in this sample pack there are two different types of canvas paper. There's this one which is the matte one, and there is also this one which is the glossy one. The glossy one seems the thicker of the two and it's more textured, so this is the one that I'm going to try first. So I popped it into my printer. You have to put it in a specific way, you can't print on both sides, but it's really obvious which side you're meant to put it in on. And I started printing. So this printer is a wireless printer. It's sent straight from my iPad with no problems to the printer. And from previous uses of my printer, I found that it prints fairly quickly. It's quite quiet, and it also prints on different size papers, so it goes all the way up to A3. I've not tried it on A3 yet. So it took this paper through absolutely fine despite the fact that it was a canvas paper, and I was excited to see the quality of the print. When sending the images from the iPad, I selected just the glossy paper. I couldn't set to say that it was a textured canvas paper, so I just chose glossy and it seemed to have no problem with that. I was delighted with the quality of the print. As you can see, the colours were really vibrant and true to the original photographs. There were no sort of pixels or lines or anything like that. Now I have found that when I've printed on different types of paper, sometimes the colour quality hasn't been quite as good, but basically Canon recommends that you use Canon papers because they work with the printer and the settings to make sure that the print quality is correct. However, I have found that Canon doesn't make the range of papers that I've wanted to test, so when I've wanted to try fine art papers, I haven't been able to find them with from the Canon make. So when I've used Matte papers, I have never been disappointed. Every single one has worked really well with the printer without having to change any printer settings, just being able to print straight from my iPad. If I'm mistaken and Canon do make fine art papers, then please do let me know in the comments, because I am always interested to give different papers a try. But also, obviously, you've got to take into consideration the price, and I've found that Matte papers are a really good price as well. This isn't an advert for Canon or Matte or anything, by the way. I'm just talking about my experience with using this printer and the different papers that I've tried. Now, although I was really impressed with the quality of the print, it actually wasn't perfect for the effects that I was trying to create, because I obviously want a miniature painting for my doll's house, not a miniature photograph, because my doll's house is a Tudor doll's house, so they didn't have photographs in that era. So I decided to pop my photo into the app called Procreate, which is an app that I use for doing digital illustrations, but you can put photographs in there. And I selected the oil paintbrush setting, and then I chose colours that were within this photograph and painted digitally over the top of the photograph so that it looked more like an oil painting. Within my little painting, I used lots of pinks and browns to create those shadows. And for the background, I merged lots of the different colours that were already there in the original photograph, so the browns and also the orangey browns that were in the foods behind Spooky. I wasn't so worried about keeping the original foods there, because actually in an oil painting I thought that you quite often just kind of have a backdrop of materials or just a dark background, and I was happy for that to be the case in this painting. I used the airbrushing tool just to merge some of the colours together at the bottom of Spooky's sheet there, just because some of the lines looked a little bit too defined. And then I carried on working in a little bit with that oil brush until I was ready to put the eyes on. And for the eyes I used a pencil setting. I didn't use the oil paintbrush setting because it's quite blurry and I wanted defined eyes. I also then had to consider the fact that this was a landscape picture, but actually it was going into a portrait frame. So I decided to extend the picture a little bit by making the canvas a different size. And I then drop filled the background colour into the top and the bottom. And I then used that oil paintbrush setting again with some of the background colours just to merge in a little bit. Now, on the screen of my iPad, this all looked correct with the correct colours, and it looked like I'd merged in that top section and bottom section really nicely. However, you will see in a second that that wasn't quite the case. So I sent this picture to print on the matte canvas paper that I had remaining, and I will just show you. So this is the glossy paper for comparison, and this one is the matte canvas one. And this first attempt here is how it came out, and can you see that really defined black area? That's because on the iPad screen I hadn't merged those colours in properly, but I couldn't see the difference between the black and the dark brown on the iPad screen. But the printer is so sensitive to the differences in colour that it was really defined when I printed it. So it took me 3 attempts of going back to the iPad and re-editing and then sending it to the printer again. It was very much trial and error because I couldn't see the differences on the iPad screen. So it took me these 3 attempts. They're all on the same piece of canvas because every time I went to print one, I put the same piece of canvas back into the printer, but just chose to print the picture in a different part of the canvas because I didn't want to waste the canvas, and also because it was my last piece of canvas. Anyway, I absolutely love the final outcome. The print quality is beautiful. Yeah, I don't know what more to say than that. So the Matte canvas paper, the matte one, is gorgeous with the Canon Pixma ip8750 printer. So I removed the original picture from this little second-hand frame. I'm hoping it's not a handmade picture. I don't think it is. It looks like it's been printed. So I took this out so that I could put my picture into the frame, ready to go into my Tudor doll's house. And just as I'm sticking this down, I'm going to give you a quick review of the Canon Pixma ip8750 printer. So I've had this printer for over a year now. When I first got it, I wasn't pleased with it because I was trying to print my fine art prints and I was trying a selection of different papers, and every time I used a different piece of paper, the colours came out differently. So in this little insert here from a previous video, all of these prints, the coloured backgrounds were all the same colour, but on every piece of paper they looked completely different, ranging from them looking greeny coloured to purpley coloured. It was meant to be sort of like a sage green, but yeah, came out differently depending on what the paper was. Now I have found that since using the Matte paper, I've had a lot more success and the colours seem much better. So the inks in the Canon printer are quite expensive, which is a bit of a problem for me. But one good thing is that you don't have to replace all the colours at once. So there's lots of separate ink cartridges in the printer. So for example, when the colour magenta runs out, that's the only colour you need to replace. So overall, now that I've found which papers I like to use with the printer, I'm happy with it. As I said earlier, I've not really tried Canon papers with the printer. I imagine that they would come out as a really good quality. Certainly, the printer doesn't print sort of pixelated or dotty or with any streaks. The actual crispness of the image is really good. So it's just that colour quality, but with the Matte papers I seem to be getting a really nice consistent colour that's true to the pictures that I'm printing. So as you can see here, I'm just adding some cotton to my little picture for my doll's house because I want to hang it as if it's hanging from a picture rail. So I'm just trying to make it as true to the Tudor era as possible. So I think they would have hung the pictures from the picture rail. When I visited Hardwick Hall, which had rooms styled in the style of the Tudor era, I looked up and double checked and there were sort of gold metal picture frames. So I've decided, rather than putting a full picture frame up, I'm just going to put 2 hooks from the beam in my Tudor doll's house because I've not got room for a full picture frame. So to make little hooks, I'm just taking these little findings out of these beads that came off a bracelet, and then I'm going to thread the cotton through them, ready to hang in my doll's house. In a second I will show you the painting in its finished position. This little section with the cotton threaded through these little hooks isn't actually quite finished in the final picture that I'm going to show you because the glue wasn't dry, but I was just so eager to show you it in its finished position. So I've gone from taking the photograph of my little ghost to digitally recreating it as a little painting to it like this in its final hanging position in the Tudor bedroom of my doll's house. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I do hope you've enjoyed these videos, and I will see you again soon. Thank you.